But Imri just gives the deck another layer of redundancy and value on its own that lets it just kind of go off out of nowhere and not need cards that are clunky in multiples, like Sword of the Meek, Thopter Foundry, and so on.
Yeah, and that's exactly what it's going to do. Now, Matthew Dilks playing Amulet Titan. This is a deck, you know, it's been around in Modern here for a while. Certainly their team has made their name playing this deck. What it can do in this matchup is it can ignore as a paradoxical outcome.
Okay, so you're the Amulet Master here. Talk to me about that a little bit.
Well, when we look at the matchup, one of the things that the outcome deck does really well is create value. We create a 4 of like Emery. We see paradoxical outcome, something that's going to draw 5 cards. Now, Urza deck, because it has Moxes, Mox Opals, and Ambers, can come out of the gates pretty fast. But generally, it's not actually a fast combo deck. It creates value while making lots of 1/1 blockers, whether with Sai or Saheeli, and then combos on, say, turn 5 or 6, but does it really resiliently. The problem is those specific chump blockers in the matchup don't actually add up against Amulet Titan. Primeval Titan often has Double Strike, often has Haste, Engineered Explosives can clear things out of the way. All the tools that Urza uses to buy extra turns don't work here. So instead of playing a value game, Dylan actually has to try to go fast, and sometimes he has to go faster than his deck really wants him to go.
Right, and I want to kind of focus on one of the things that you brought up in the Engineered Explosives. Amulet Titan gets to main deck this card, and it's incredibly effective against the Outcome deck, in spite of the fact that Outcome plays Engineered Explosives of its own.
So we start here with the match. One thing that will help Dylan, his team is the 1 seed, so getting to be on the play here. This is still a racing matchup, so that puts him a turn ahead.
Right, that's going to be absolutely colossal in just the fact that it's going to let him develop more.
Prismatic Vista and Arkham's Astrolabe to start here for Dylan. But the things that you're going to want, and I was going to say maybe the most important card here for Dilks, is, you normally say it's Amulet Vigor, but I kind of like Sakura Tribe Scout. Dylan doesn't remove it. So this is a rampant growth every turn.
Right, and you know, there's even a point where a turn 1 Sakura Tribe Scout is generally going to be better than a turn 1 Amulet of Vigor. You can play the Amulet the turn you want to go off and be fine. Tribe Scout, you want to have it on turn 1.
Exactly. You see from Dylan, Everflowing Chalice on 1. And just passes. His hand actually, in other matchups, would be pretty powerful. He has 2 Mox Opals and a Paradoxical Outcome at the ready. That's a lot of card draw, a lot of mana early on. But
value just isn't the fight you're fighting.
Right, it's not value. It's not a combo. The card he really wants to see in his opener, in my opinion, would be Urza.
Right, the Namesake is the thing that lets this deck just go off. It actually turns all of those tokens into mana, which then is more cards off Urza, which is more off Outcome, and is what actually leads to killing the opponent.
And Dylan's going to try to find it. Turn 3, it's Mox Opal. It's Mishra's Bauble. It's Paradoxical Outcome, bouncing 4 artifacts, drawing 4 cards. And 4 new ones into the hand. Don't believe he found an Urza yet.
No, I think I saw a Sai hiding out in hand there, but like you said, no Urza.
And in a lot of matchups where Sai would be good, Sai is a great stream of 1/1s, but that just doesn't match up against Primeval Titan.
Right. The times when Sai is good when you're trying to combo off are the situations where you already have an Urza, since you can just tap the 2 artifacts you're going to sacrifice.
Dylan going to redeploy. It's Mishra's Bauble. Everflowing Chalice on 0. Wants to get Metalcraft for the Mox Opal, and that is what he'll get.
He has so many cards in his hand, it's better than discarding.
Opal will cast Float of Mana. He'll cast another Mox Opal. This is 3 total mana, and he does get Sai onto the board. Bauble makes a Thopter. Believe down to 4 cards again.
Donegan threatening to attack for an entire point of damage next turn.
Well, he's done so much here, but I don't know how far it's gotten him.
Right. It reminds me, I think it's Remand has flavor text to the effect of, at least all that hand waving you did looked nice.
That is, yeah. And we see Castle, Garenbrig. That was put on the end step for Dilks. This actually lets Amulet go even faster. And you see just how easy it is to make a turn 3 Titan.
Right.
There's Castle, here's Fountain, here's Gemstone Mine, and that is 6 mana.
What time is it?
Easy. prime time on the battlefield, turn 3. That was just a turn 1 Tribe Scout. Tapped twice.
Yep.
Simple. It doesn't have haste because there's no amulet in play, but when you cast the Titan to turn early, that's pretty similar to having haste.
Yeah, exactly. This is kind of telling Donegan, all right, you have a turn.
Yeah.
Make it a good one.
Yeah, you have to think that this is Donegan's last turn, because if Primeval Titan attacks, it's not clear that Dilks will win, but he'll do something really powerful.
Right.
And if it's not winning, it's going to be sweeping up Dylan's board with an engineered explosives, something along the lines of that.
Right. Just getting an engineered explosives here. Look at how many 0 converted mana cost cards are on Donegan's side of the battlefield. Obviously, he can sacrifice the Mishra's Baubles, but losing Mox Opal, losing tokens, and so on, that's a real cost.
Right. See here, because there's no amulet, Dilks is going to get the Teleria West this turn.
Looks like he's trying to figure out which bounce land to pair with it.
And actually, I like to say it's 2 Teleria Wests.
So this says to me that he has at least 1 bounce land in hand.
Might have 1 in hand. I mean, certainly the Primeval Titan can get bounce lands, but he'll lose mana when he does that. I'm inclined to agree.
It also might just be that he knows he needs to get a bounce land after this anyway, so this just rolls up double blue.
Yeah. Yeah, by having your mana split apart over multiple lands, it gives you flexibility. Sometimes when your lands tap for 2, especially when you need specific colors, you end up wasting mana. It's the kind of matchup where he's going to want 2 Teleria Wests at some point anyway.
Right. All right, there it is.
This is the card we wanted. Urza. Lord High Artificer from Dylan. It is the draw. Now the question is, can he actually full combo? He makes 3 blue, and the answer might just be yes here. Here's SCGPHILLY.
Okay, this is how it happens. This is what Donegan winning this turn looks like. This is how it starts.
Yeah. This isn't we talked before about how value wasn't good, but this isn't value. This is a combo.
Oh no, this is almost an Ancestral Recall. You aren't literally drawing 3 cards off this Astrolabe, but you are getting 2 tokens and drawing a card in 3 mana.
Right, the Astrolabe, you pay 1 mana, you get 3 mana and draw a card. There's some pretty degenerate stuff going on.
Oh yeah, you remember those times where we thought Manamorphose was an unfair thing? This is a Dark Ritual version of Manamorphose.
So the question here that I'd have for you is, how does this end? So say Dylan starts drawing his whole deck, making tons of mana. How does the win come into play?
So there are a few different ways that it can happen. It looks like the one that Donegan's leaning into this weekend is just Nexus of Fate.
Okay, he has 1 Nexus of Fate in the deck.
So you just take another turn and attack.
Sure.
One of the ways that, we'll say the fairer ways that this deck actually ends up winning games is by simply copying a construct and then attacking with a huge one.
I need to pause here because I don't know that Dylan can do it.
So he bricked!
So what happened was he had the 3 blue mana, he used 2 of it, sacrificed an artifact to draw a card, but he had no more artifacts.
Oh my gosh!
And this is a reprieve for Dilks.
And this is exactly what you were talking about before, how the deck can't always go off that quickly.
Right. Pushed to combo a turn too early. Now, there's a lot on the board here. Dilks either has to find a way to attack for 20, or he really has some cleanup to do.
On the bright side, there is a main deck copy of Engineered Explosives that this Teleria West can go and find.
Right. I think any form of cleanup has to start there. In the main, the tools he has is a Reclamation Sage and the 1 Engineered Explosives and a 1 of Pact of Negation. The deck that Dilks is playing this weekend is a lot more lean on its bullet targets. Those are the only non-land ones. Now, I think all 3 of them are good here.
Speak of the devil. It looks like he just had the 3rd Teleria West in hand.
Okay. So, starts with a transmute. First game we have in Noah Walker. Takes game 1 in the Delver Mirror. And you see, so now Daryl, fellow Amulet Pilot, while shuffling, is going to weigh in on this board. And this is a pretty tricky turn.
Yeah, there are a lot of ways that are good. Right, it's unlikely that whatever Dilks does is bad for him, but here it's about maximizing the advantage you get.
Well, I think it's pretty scary. If he gets this wrong, he's not getting another turn. Yes, he can clean up a lot of Dylan's cards, but Dylan gets to untap all those islands, and he does have 5 cards in hand.
Right, and it's a tough spot because you don't want to let Donegan untap, because then whatever you're going to blow up with this engineered explosives, Donegan just gets to sacrifice to Sai, put in mana towards Urza.
Right.
It's a lot of real estate that you're just letting Donegan have.
Primeval Titan attacking. And should see whether it's going after Saheeli or Dylan. If you can't kill Dylan, you might need to get rid of the Planeswalker.
Right, and even that's tough because then Donegan gets a choice between keeping Saheeli, keeping Sai.
Right.
It's unlikely we're going to see him throw something like Urza under the bus.
So the Titan is attacking Saheeli. Dilks does not think he can win this turn.
Right, and this is exactly that cleanup duty that you were talking about.
Yeah, I mean, the next best thing he can do is he can get a Pact of Negation into his hand. He'll probably need it.
Okay.
If he can get all the way to another Summoner's Pact, he can Reclamation Sage something. Now, that said, I don't see much here that I want to Rec Sage that the Engineer Explosives doesn't already have covered.
Yeah, the big thing that you really need to get off the battlefield is this copy of Urza, but I just don't think that the Titan deck is going to be very good at doing that.
No, in the past, what you would do is you'd make a really large Walking Ballista to deal with all this, but Dilks hasn't registered the card today.
Sure, the assumption being that Field of the Dead is just going to be good enough in those long, grindy matchups where you usually want it.
Right. It does a lot of the same functions, but killing X2s and X3s, that's something that it actually doesn't do. You know, an army of zombies here doesn't actually do too much for Dilks.
No, it feels like this is just him trying to apply pressure and set up to kill 1 or 2 turns down the road.
Gets Field of the Dead and a Simic Growth Chamber. Bouncing his Gemstone Mine. Engineered Explosives is sacrificed.
Ooh, all with the Field of the Dead trigger on the stack.
Yeah, I like it. That way his own zombies get to survive. Now, heads up play by Dylan is he puts Sai in front of the Titan, which means Saheeli survives.
Oh, I'm not sure you actually get a zombie since now there were 2 Teleria Wests, but I guess you get to replay the Gemstone Mine and get it.
And tutors up the Pact of Negations. These are the tools we were talking about. Crack the Explosives, gets a Pact. Now, the danger here is that these are one-ofs in his deck that he's used and can't rebuy. So he needs to, after this turn, really focus on winning, because after that, there's no more defense.
Right, and, you know, there is 15 power in play, counting that Tribe Scout.
All right. It's a good start, but we'll see. The question is, how much damage is Dylan going to do this turn? Did he find any artifacts?
There are a lot of blue cards and a lot of lands in his hand.
We see Paradoxical Outcome, Emery, some lands.
Another Sai from the looks of things.
And the question would be, what can he outcome, if anything? Yeah, this hand just, it feels unlucky on Dylan's side, and yeah, he picks up the cards. It's such a swing, right? So this is a matchup that can be tough for Dylan, but it got to a spot where I thought he was going to win.
Right.
You know, when he had that 6-card hand with the Urza, you thought Dylan's pulled this one out, and then he breaks on the draw.
Yeah, and that's kind of what it takes on Dilks' side, is you need that brick to happen, and you need outcome to kind of just experience its fail rate.
So a close one there, but Dilks comes out ahead, and we finish our game ones in Standard. Dilks' teammate John Rossum picking up a win. So their team 2-1 in the game ones.
Okay. It just makes sense. 2/3 of Team Amulet has 2/3 of the wins.
2/3 of Team. Okay.
It's
but not by the Amulet players. You know, it's not like
Dilks.
It's not like Ayers and Dilks and Edgar all individually have the wins.
Oh, that'd be disrespectful. They know how to put on
if
a
that
good
was the
show,
score.
okay?
If the score was literally just all 3 of them winning. Yeah, let me tell you, Team Amulet didn't do so hot in the game ones. But we move over to the sideboard. So Dylan will be on the play. I actually like this in his sideboard, despite being mostly a mono blue deck. He has 3 copies of Oko, Thief of Crowns in his board today.
That card's great at just checking some of the boxes and answering specific problems that the deck has. Like, in cases like this, you could even see it just turning a Primeval Titan into an Elk, or turning an Amulet of Vigor into an Elk.
I like turning Amulet of Vigor into an Elk. Turning Primeval Titan into an Elk feels like you did it too late.
Here's the thing. It's risky.
Okay. Okay. Yes, continue.
But no, think about that last game where Dilks, say, gets the 2 Teleria Wests, and then you turn off Primeval Titan.
Okay. All right. Yeah, and games that doesn't have haste, yeah, it would be very good there. You're not wrong. So do you think Oko is good enough to come in?
It's tough. It feels like a lot of what Donegan wants to be doing here is just leaning really far into the combo and trying to specifically tag Primeval Titan with something like Thought Siege. You can probably make a case for Stoic Rebuttal against a big mana deck.
Yeah, I like both of those here, actually. That makes a lot of sense to me.
Maybe Pithing Needle to try to hurt some of the lands, just hitting like Teleria West or Engineered Explosives. Those are all plays, and since it is it kind of does the Engineered Explosives thing, right, where it can be a combo piece that also is an interactive spell.
Because a 1-mana artifact with no text is a reasonable card in Dylan's deck, I can make a case for it.
Exactly. I'm not saying it's anything that's going to completely shut the whole deck off, but things like Outcome can even reset it.
So Dilks is already qualified for the Players' Championship. For Dylan Donegan on the leaderboard, he's hoping to get there as well. We have just a few events left here in Season 2 in 2020, or 2019 as we work toward 2020. We are here in Philadelphia, but the remaining events we have are going to be in Indianapolis and Atlanta before the Players' Championship. Now, if you want to look ahead and want to be part of this race in 2020, that is going to be our Season 1. We now have the schedule published. You see our locations here: Columbus, Knoxville, Richmond, back here in Philadelphia, Indianapolis, regional championships in March, Baltimore, and Syracuse. Right now, we knew the formats of the first 3 events. As those events, the next ones come by, we will announce the formats. You can always see them on our webpage. And as we work our way back toward June 11th and 14th, it is SCGCon. That is the end of Season 1 of next year.
I'm so excited that we're going back to Knoxville.
We haven't been there in a long time.
No, we haven't been there since November 18th and 19th of 2016.
That is a very specific thing to know off the bat.
Look, Matthias, I got the job for a reason. Give me some credit.
So, I'm looking back at our sideboard second. I do want to glance at what Dilks has going on here. In his sideboard, 2 copies of Force of Vigor, which I assume will come in along with the second Engineered Explosives.
There's no way they're not. It is
so
a free
good.
spell sometimes. And a lot of other times, if he just has the early Sakura Tribe Scout, it's a fine 4-drop.
Do you like Disdainful Stroke against this deck?
That one's kind of tough. It answers specifically Urza and Paradoxical Outcome. And the more reactive spells that Dilks puts in his deck, the more diluted it's going to get as a synergy deck. But if we see him cutting things in the vein of Radiant Fountain, maybe even Cavern of Souls, things that he thinks are not going to be particularly effective in this matchup, and he just has a bunch of room, then I could see that being one of the cards that he chooses to reach for. I might be more interested in something like Dismember, because it can go after Urza and Sai, and it only costs 1 mana.
Yeah, and sufficient answer. It almost counters the same things. Paradoxical Outcome, despite being a powerful spell and one of the namesake cards in the deck, doesn't feel like one of the cards that Dilks cares about.
No, the issue is there's either so many cards that the Paradoxical Outcome is going to bury you, and Disdainful Stroke is probably already too late, or it's early enough in the game that it's kind of just a value outcome, and that's not the card you actually want to be targeting with your interaction. There's also the point where Dilks just wants to tap out. Disdainful Stroke only works as Donegan's casting the spell.
We do see that a lot in Amulet Titan. It's the fact that they registered a 2-mana counter spell this weekend is pretty significant. In the past, your counter spells would have been Spell Pierce or Swan Song, something like that is really lean and that you can somehow sneak in while you're casting big mana.
Right, so what do you think something like Disdainful Stroke is them trying to respect?
Well, if there's enough matchups where you're just on the slower end of things, then you do need to play a true counter spell. You know, there are things that Spell Pierce just won't deal with, namely, creatures that can beat you. There's a lot of stuff that it can't deal with. So Disdainful Stroke is a hard counter here against big mana decks, and we did see that this weekend. Big mana is really popular.
Good amount of Valakut in day 2 as well. You want to make sure you're able to hit other copies of Primeval Titan.
Yeah, and that's a really surprising one, right? 4 copies of Amulet Titan and 3 copies of Titan Shift in our day 2 are both over performances. 3 copies of Tron, I would have said I expected, but that's 10 big mana decks out of 28 in the field.
Right, and Tron's just so popular. It has been for over a year now, ever since people started, honestly, just respecting it as an archetype.
Tron is really solid. I certainly expect that, but Disdainful Stroke was a meta call for this weekend, I think more than anything else, and they called the meta correctly.
Yeah, I mean, look how it's paid off.
I am interested about some of the things that they gave up to be able to do that. Mentioning before, not having Walking Ballista in the deck. There are a lot of matchups where that card is really important.
Sure. Well, it doesn't look like that there are very many humans that came out this weekend. There's not a lot of Infect. There isn't a lot of, say, Devoted Druid Company.
That's exactly what I'm looking at. 1 copy of Infect, 1 copy of Humans, 2 copies of Affinity. Those are decks where Walking Ballista shines.
Right, and looking at our modern metagame breakdown here, other than that, I don't think I really want it anywhere else. I mean, I can see situations where it's good against, say, Burn, but...
Yeah, it tends to be slow there. I mean, it's good against Azorius Control, but something we've said is that now that you have Field of the Dead, you don't need it to be good against Azorius Control.
Right, and it feels like in Amulet Titan specifically, slots are just so precious. Like, you don't actually want to have that many cards that are just bullets if you can just make a Primeval Titan and execute your own game plan reliably.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, you don't want a bullet that you're not going to use. And one of the things they're saying is they don't need them. 2 copies of Castle Garenbrig. Not just 1 as a target, but something they want to actively draw.
Right. Donegan is not at the face of someone happy with their opening hand.
Going to go ahead and ask Noah about it. That is a keep on 6 for both players. And here we go. It's going to be an Engineered Explosives on 1 for Dylan. Covers possible Tribe Scouts and Amulets.
Right, and I just look back at that last game, how Tribe Scout absolutely buried Donegan.
Right. Interestingly, on Dilks' side, he'll go ahead and make the Tribe Scout right into the Amulet.
Yeah, this is going to eat Donegan's turn, too.
See Donegan's hand. Look, it might just be lands and Mox Amber.
You can't feel too good about it, but if you felt like Engineered Explosives was going to be able to buy you some time, if it has anything like an Urza, you might just be tempted to keep it because you know it's your most important card.
Right. Ancient Stirrings here from Dilks. Bounce land is an option. Tempting one is his Gemstone Mine went down to 1. Also, Engineered Explosives in the top 5.
And now that they've sideboarded, Dilks does have 2 copies of Engineered Explosives, not just the one like he did in the first game.
He finds Teleria West, it looks like, off the Stirrings. Already had a bounce land. Goes ahead and picks up the mine to reset it. And now's my question. Does Dylan actually have anything going on?
It doesn't look like it.
No, I mean, especially in this deck, right? At 3 mana, it's very strange to have a hand that wouldn't have a play here.
No Astrolabe, no Sai, no Bobble.
Emery or Chalice would also be plays here.
Right.
And on the other hand, he's stranding Dilks' Dismember.
Looks like Dilks is trying to figure out what is happening over there, and if he wants to lean into something like Azusa on this turn.
Yeah, Dilks is also mostly lands. Now, if he has an Azusa, it's a pretty strong play. So here's Amulet of Vigor, floating 1. Thinking maybe he's going to pick up a bounce land, make an Azusa. It's just going to be Gemstone Mine. And a pass.
Interesting.
He's not under pressure. It's one of the advantages of being a Primeval Titan deck is that if your opponent isn't doing anything, you don't have to do anything either.
Listen, my friend, you are the aggressor. I'll get around to killing you.
I will go as slow as you let me.
Donegan really hoping to make something like an Urza next turn. He doesn't know that Dilks has Dismember, but that's what would make this hand to make sense. No one keeps 5 lands engineered explosives on 6.
Back to Dylan we go. A snow-covered forest for Donegan.
Threatening Oko.
There we go. Here is Urza. Construct at the ready. Dilks does have the Dismember. Now there's a target for it. Urza will hit the graveyard as Dilks goes to 16. So a lonely 1/1 construct here.
Some high artificer.
And now maybe it's time for that Azusa. Without the land drop being made yet, Dilks could go Azusa, triple bounce land Titan if everything lines up here.
It might be time.
And much less threatening, it's just a transmute of Teleria West.
Ooh, maybe that means it's time to get another bounce land.
Well, here's Summoner's Pact. So actually, if you just want to go for a slow Titan, Dilks makes a land this turn, says go. Next turn, bounce land Titan.
Yeah, that checks out.
And Cavern of Souls on Giant, just in case. This means that Dylan will have to counter the Summoner's Pact instead of the Primeval Titan.
God, and that does not feel good. You want to put Dilks in a situation where he has to commit a bunch of mana into that pact.
Right, and he'd lose the Gemstone Mine. There's a lot.
Right.
Yeah. On 3, we have Sai.
All right, that plays.
I think Dylan's going to try to overpower the Titan. We see Mox Amber makes a Thopter, Mox Opal makes a Thopter. So the Dylan now empty-handed, but 5 artifacts in play.
This is 7 power total.
Right. The Construct swings in.
Rather.
Dilks down to 11, but because there's an Amulet on the board, that still might not be enough. So because of that, Dylan's going to look farther. 2 mana, sacrifices 2 Thopters, draws a card. It's a Prismatic Vista. That does not help.
Ugh.
He wanted to find a counter spell here.
Right. Stoic Rebuttal or Thoughtseize would have both been huge pickups there.
Dylan's really hoping Dilks doesn't have a bounce land, but he's not sacrificing a Gemstone Mine if he didn't have it. It's 2 mana. That's going to be the Cavern of Souls on Giant. Let's make it 6. And it just had the Primeval Titan. There wasn't even a way to even if Dylan had found a counter spell, it was no good here.
Oh, yeah. Dilks just does not want to give him the option.
So, Titan hits the battlefield. Going to get Boros Garrison Slayer Stronghold. Double checking here with Daryl to make sure that that's the best way to play it, but I think against an opponent who is recently empty-handed, it's pretty free to do this.
Oh, yeah.
And, okay, he's going to actually take a safer line. Might be Simic Growth Chamber, Teleria West. Yeah, that's going to be it. Gets the 3 mana, transmutes, and might go straight for Pact of Negation.
Yeah, and, you know, the thought here is you don't have to give Donegan any points.
Right. the thing is, because he had no extra mana, if he went for Boros, Garrison, Slayer, Stronghold, because the second 2 lands happen in combat, he actually wouldn't get to make this transmute. So if he really wants the Pact and nothing else, this is the only way for him to do it.
Right, and, I think I like this line.
Yeah, the Pact and Negation it matters a lot here. And it's not, he didn't cost himself much. So we go back over to Dylan. Can he survive? Good news for Dylan. His teammate Noah Walker has won the match in Legacy. 2-0 over Daryl Ayers. But
it's coming down
shakes
to
a
standard.
hand. So Dilks picks up a win. Walker picks up a win, which now means it's going to be Edgar Magalhaes versus John Rossum. Edgar not playing with his teammates, so Rossum is standing in.
Uh-oh,
Edgar
one
needs
side
to
has more zombies than the other.
Edgar going to need to prove to his teammates just can knock them out here with a win. And 13 and 19 the life totals. Kenrith and Golos blocking, Teferi going down. Hydroid Krasis, then the follow-up for Rossum. It is 8 counters on the Krasis, draws 4, gains 4. But will that be enough to overpower a Kenrith? That card is pretty bonkers.
Yeah, getting to untap with Kenrith, the Return King, is so big. Okay, a third Field of the Dead is a way to do it.
It's a lot of zombies.
We're talking multiple zombies here.
Yeah,
Several.
Kenrith here, 5 abilities, costing 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And Edgar getting to untap with 9 mana.
There's even a point where you can start looking at lines where you say attack with Golos in order to just reanimate your own Golos with Kenrith's 5th ability.
Do we see red mana, though, for Edgar?
There isn't any
I
to
don't
give
think
haste,
he hasn't.
but black is the reanimate one.
Black's the reanimate. No, I mean for activating Golos.
Oh, right. Well, I have good news.
Okay, what's that?
Golos can get a red mana if
All
it
right.
dies, and then you reanimate it.
So don't block the Golos.
Right.
Swing here for Edgar. On its surface, it's for 7. Zombie in front of Golos. Just blocking as much as he can, does Rossum. And it's going to just be a Krasis of Edgar's own. That is not, I think, as strong of a play as he would hope for.
No, and there's a point where, as this is going to sound like a joke, but you're at such a disadvantage if you're playing smaller Krasis than your opponent.
Okay.
Because on top of the fact that they're kind of what rule the skies, they're just the biggest bodies in the deck, that also means that you're just going to have access to fewer resources than your opponent.
And right now, Rossum with those slim advantages. Krasis is slightly bigger. He has 1 more Field of the Dead. Now, the downside for Rossum, no Golos, no Kenrith. But goes for 5 mana. Maybe I spoke too soon. Here is a Golos.
Just give it a second.
Let's get 4 more zombies. There we go. Now up 4 Fields of the Dead to 2. And if he has a land in his hand to play this turn, he might have Golos mana online as well.
Well, it has to be an untapped land.
All right, so it's going to be just circuitous route for Rossum. Sorcerer's going to make 8 more zombies. That should really force Edgar to have the sweeper.
Oh, yeah. That is... We're looking at a solid 30-40 power on Rossum's side of the battlefield.
The question, though, is if Edgar has a sweeper, can Rossum set up to have double Wooburg?
Well, if he has the sweeper, the Golos goes away.
Just depends, right? If it's Deputy of Detention, it doesn't. If it's just a real sweeper.
Right.
So much going on. As far as sweepers go in Edgar's list, one-time wipe. That's in the sideboard.
He has 2 Realm Cloak Giant as well.
Does he have 2 Realm Cloak Giant?
The question is if he actually has one in his hand, because with these land drops that Rossum had afterwards, this is just... Oh, Edgar's so far behind on the battlefield.
He can use Fire Off. No, he can't fire off a Golos. He still doesn't have the red mana.
I cannot count the zombies on the battlefield. I'm going to level with you.
I will tell you, they are countable. I don't know the actual count of them.
I don't have near that many fingers.
Right.
Therefore, they are not countable.
Boo. Look, because Edgar's counting them. See, they're countable.
It's not fair. He gets to touch them with his fingers. Oh, I'm good at counting dice.
Oh, I like that we're doing it this way.
Oh, they're in 5s?
Oh, so he has 4,555. I think that's what that means.
Oh, my gosh.
Or he has 19.
That's like... Is that more than 25? I think it's more than 25.
Well, 4 is bigger than 2. So I think so. This one starts with a 4.
Thanks, Matthias. You tell me the best stuff.
More zombies here from Rossum.
Bright side, unironically, Kinrith does gain a good chunk of life.
Yeah,
With the white ability, for 3 mana, it gains 5 life.
Target player gains 5 life.
Okay.
This card, all of its abilities are multiplayer oriented.
I mean, it makes sense. Kinrith's the king of the 5 realms.
All right. Another Field of the Dead here. So Edgar now on 3 fields. He has 7 zombies of his own. Looks like Edgar with Golos, Teferi, Veil of Summer. He's got another card hiding there.
I think it's Assassin's Trophy.
That looks right. And another Golos from Edgar. That one gets Legend ruled away immediately. Finds a 4th Field of the Dead. So now 4 Fields of the Dead on both sides. Just gotta keep pace.
You know, I'll bet Golos mirrors. I'll bet that's what happens in Purgatory.
You have to keep pace. There's just more Fields of the Dead.
The game never ends. No one ever dies.
Well, they do, but then they just become zombies for Field of the Dead.
It's a cyclical one.
Here is Growth Spiral for John Rossum.
Edgar just representing an extra 10 life.
Well, I'm trying to make 4 more zombies. There we go, Edgar. Yeah, we're appreciate it. Appreciate it. Would you take this 3 off and then change 3 of the 5s to 6s?
Well, hold on. 3 plus 5 is 8, though. So why are we changing it to 6?
Yeah, that's a good point. Back to Rossum.
Is that Agent of Treachery hiding out in Rossum's hand?
Let's start with Once Upon a Time. So you want to steal the Kenrith?
Kinrith. Because then you can start giving all of the rest of your zombies haste.
That seems decent.
When you have this many more zombies than your opponent, it's super decent.
Once Upon a Time finds Beanstalk Giant. Cards on the bottom here. Yeah, I mean, if he can steal the Kenrith, certainly helps. I don't know if he needs to right now. These zombies can attack, but you're right. There is Agent of Treachery in hand. Beanstalk Giant's off on an adventure. No, it's in his hand, actually.
So there's 4, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 total mana, which puts you down to 7 for the Agent of Treachery.
Down to
1
6.
to feed Kenrith. You have 6 mana left over and a land drop for turn, right? So it's possible that between the Beanstalk Giant and a land, that you have 8 additional zombies attacking here, as well as the Kenrith and the Agent of Treachery themselves. So it's just worth 20 extra points, but that's also assuming...
These
It's hard to
Golos mirrors are
calculate.
actually hard to play.
Yeah, it's so hard to calculate everything that could happen with both players have 5 cards in hand and 15 mana.
So, 4 mana, one of which is blue. Rossum grabs a second blue. That's mana 6 and number 7. Should be good for the Agent of Treachery. That's going to steal, we believe, Kenrith. And Veil of Summer. Going to give creatures hexproof from blue. Draws a card. So Agent of Treachery just a very expensive.
Tolarian Scholar. Tolarian Scholar is the one out of Dominaria that's a blue and 2 for a 2/3, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
All right.
This one's double blue.
I mean, it costs 7.
There we go.
Yeah.
That looks pretty similar to the Agent of Treachery. So, Edgar gets to hold on to his Kenrith. This Kenrith is also a card that is not in Rossum's deck. So, still 7 mana left over for Rossum.
Probably weighing between casting cards from hand or just
Golosing.
Golosing.
I'm still curious whether or not he can win with an attack here.
Looks like he just got in with a Hydroid Crisis.
Okay, so Edgar's down to 5, but there's going to be another turn. Another Agent of Treachery is actually in Rossum's hand, but the hexproof from blue still stands. So it's going to be just casting Beanstalk Giant for Rossum.
Okay, so what's likely going on here is the assumption is that stealing Kenrith will happen next turn, and Beanstalk Giant is a lot of power to give trample to.
So Rossum passes one more turn for Edgar. End step, Kenrith reanimated a Golos.
Ooh. There's that red mana that Edgar's been missing.
Okay, so now we can start activating Golos.
You see, no, not barely able to keep up with what's going on there.
So lay out all the cards here. Does he actually have a red mana in play? Did he grab one?
Yeah, there's a Temple of Epiphany hiding out up there somewhere.
Okay.
All right, so 27 zombies to 15 zombies. There's a 12 zombie deficit that Edgar needs to make up here, and that's not even getting into Beanstalk Giant.
Circuitous route from Edgar. More zombies. He also has 4 Field of Dead, so that's 8 more zombies for Edgar. Seven mana here from Edgar. He's going to be casting his own Beanstalk Giant. Gets 8 more zombies. Up to
all right,
27 zombies apiece. Actually, it's just
no
made
longer
parity.
A zombie deficit.
And with a red mana, I just gave them trample and haste. Is this lethal?
Yeah.
Well, hold on.
He has the Assassin's Trophy, so if he puts Beanstalk Giant in front of Beanstalk Giant, he Assassin's
gonna
Trophy
lose.
the
He's gonna
Beanstalk
lose.
Giant, and he loses.
But you can't stop it. Whatever. Right? There's actually no way to stop that.
Right, no.
Giant has trample.
I think Edgar's pulled it out.
Whoa, okay, hold on. We'll see what... I think you're right. And the Kenrith coming into play huge with that single red ability. Beanstalk Giant right now for Edgar. And you can see it on his hands, too. He knows.
Oh, he is... Oof.
Yeah, Ross says, hey, you know, if there's a removal spell, I can't really do much about it. Because each deck has managed to make so much at sorcery speed, it's that single red on Kenrith that ends up being the difference maker.
Yep, just also giving trample is so huge.
So let's counting lands here we have. So Beanstalk Giant goes in front of Beanstalk. Golos in front of Golos. Agent in front of Kenrith. So it's going to trample over for 2. Can we count Edgar's lands? 5, 6, 7, 17. Well, that's Rossum's life total. If he doesn't double block the Beanstalk Giant, he's going to lose then.
Well, it's hard to say what's even a productive amount of... Because we see that Kenrith is also trampling over...
There is a block that saves him. If he puts Golos in front of the Beanstalk Giant to get the extra 5 toughness on there and then moves a zombie over in front of the Golos...
Everything is trample.
Works. Right. The Assassin's Trophy does it, and we do go to game 3.
Oh, wow, wow, wow.
Yeah, if you make that block... I mean, you have to just have a read on Assassin's Trophy. Because then the Golos 5 means it tramples for 12.
Okay.
So Beanstalk tramples for 12,
right.
Golos tramples for 1 over a zombie, and Kenrith tramples for 2 over the Agent of Treachery, and you take 16.
There's still an unblocked zombie then.
So 2,
you had
5.
to move a zombie over.
No, you're right. It is still 17.
Oh, yeah.
There's no way around it.
It was lined up.
And
Unbelievable.
Edgar with
what
a turnaround.
What an upset.
Yeah.
It felt like Rossum was just in control of that game, but Edgar kind of mapped it out, it felt like.
Well, right, and this is how ramp matchups go. We talk about, in control, but when I think about in control, I think about counter spells, and no one can do any of that. So in control just means you've done something bigger than what your opponent has done. And in that sense, your opponent can always just turn around and do something even bigger, which is what Edgar's able to do.
Excuse me. Assassin's Trophy, your thing mid-combat. Good luck.
It was going to be really hard to play around.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was impossible to play around.
And that will send to a 3rd game. So, these game 3 between the two. Rossum's so close here. These 2 teammates on Lotus Box will get ready for a 3rd game. Now, if you haven't had a chance to go over to Star City Games to check out our weekly sale, there is still time. We have right now. Hundreds of singles on discounted prices all weekend long. StarCityGames.com/sale.
I love that art on Rest in Peace, but I feel like it might have been too soon when they made it. You know, it was right after War of the Spark when we found out that Gideon died. Spoilers.
Wait, what?
Don't be too disappointed, Matthias.
I just didn't notice.
Well, you see, rest in peace, generally people will say it when alluding to... You know what? Never mind.
Okay. Continuing. The Magic Land Planeswalkers don't always stay dead.
Well,
Some do.
let's see. I guess Karn kind of came back to life. Does that count?
Well, we're going back to Theros this year.
That's true.
Oh, come on. We're definitely... There might be an Elspeth card.
There might be. I mean, there is the Mythic Edition Elspeth where it has Elspeth with a Mask of the Returned.
Okay.
So
Wonder what that's all about.
I imagine she's conscious wherever she is.
Well, she's in Nyx, right?
We're getting further into lore than I can go.
So, going to game 3 here between the two.
And this would have been a draw in the Swiss rounds.
Yeah, we are at over 50 minutes.
We are 51 minutes in, going into game 3.
You can't say that the mirror matches here of Bant Golos are pretty lengthy, but they are interesting.
Right. There's a lot going on. There are a lot of turnarounds, a lot of decisions. It doesn't even feel like anyone's taking that long. It's just there are so many things to do.
There are just so many zombies. And we see there the one of Kenrith. I earlier said that just Edgar had one. That's not true. His teammates, they do have similar lists. But that is something that not everyone this weekend has had. And I think we can see there is some advantage to these cards like Fae of Wishes or Kenrith the Returned King.
Right. One of the things that have kind of defined the successful Bant Golos list this weekend, look at everybody in the top 4. There's been some way for them to go over the top of a traditional list. Either Kenrith, Fae of Wishes, Zach Allen has Yarok with Risen Reef to go over the top, and main deck copies of Agent of Treachery.
I really like the Yarok to go over the top in these matchups.
Oh, absolutely. Especially when paired with things like Find Finality. Get it back.
Ooh.
I might have put too much emphasis on finality. You're finding Agent of Treachery and Yarok.
Steal a few things.
And drawing 3 cards off the Agent.
Right, okay. If you can trigger Agent of Treachery, that's a pretty fun time.
Oh,
if you've stolen enough things that it rewards you for winning.
That's one of those where it feels like you get into the territory of literally decking yourself.
Now, does that seem fair? Is that a win more ability? If you've controlled 3 things you don't own, have 3 more cards.
It's complicated.
On both players. Looks like a mulligan to 6 here for Rossum. He is kept. Edgar's still thinking about it.
And one of the things about this matchup that can happen is, so the first few turns feel like they don't matter pretty frequently because everything just gets so gummed up. But if you just say miss a land drop too early, that can end up snowballing in a big way where you just get buried by zombies while you're still trying to develop.
If one player can ramp and the other player can't, due to mulligans, hand composition, something like that, it will cause a short game. Edgar knows that, and that's why it looks like he's going to go to 5.
Right, and there were some good cards in his hand. The first card that we saw go back into the library was a Golos. So this is likely just an incredibly disciplined mulligan on his part.
You know, and in a ramp mirror, Edgar's on the draw. He does get the same number of cards as Rossum, even though he's down to mulligan. And because both decks are pretty slow out of the gates, this isn't a deal breaker that he's gone to 5 here.
Right, and there are so many things like Circuitous Route to Fairy that all just make up that card anyway.
Right.
And when games go long and you have these high resource situations where no one's really grinding anybody down, the difference between having 15 resources to 16 resources is not that pronounced.
Yeah, the scary part is going to be whether or not he can get to that point in the game.
Right.
So he's kept here on 5. Once Upon a Time to start off with for John Rossum. And I like this, just prioritizing lands. It's what's going to be important here. Fabled Passage was the find. And that'll be his land for the first turn. And that's the question for the early turns, I think, is both players wanting to make sure that they hit land drops here.
Right. That's what's going to be the stumble that just puts someone out of the game, even if it feels subtle. When all you're trying to do is put lands into play, missing the free put a land into play that you have each turn is so brutal.
Temple Garden into play untapped for Rossum, down to 18. And will be a growth spiral. And Rossum pushes the advantage. Overgrown Tomb into play. Up to 4 mana. Does he have Circuitous Route?
Oh.
He does. So he's up to 6. Now is the question of whether he has payoff.
And, gosh, between being on the play and on this ramp, Rossum is so far ahead. Right. It's 6 lands to 2.
That part looks right. Now, what he still needs, though, is a Golos, is a Hydroid Krasis, is a Field of the Dead at the very least.
Just something to do with all this mana.
And you see on Edgar's side, just a 3rd land, has not played a spell yet.
Well, it is possible he can growth spiral at instant speed here.
And I don't know that Rossum has a payoff yet. He has another Circuitous Route, but at this point, I'm not even sure he wants to cast that. He really would like to get some value. But Golos is going to be excellent.
I'll call that a payoff.
That is a payoff. It's a ramp spell. Now, do you get Field of the Dead, or do you get the Mountain?
I think he has a Boros Guildgate in his hand.
Okay, so then Field of the Dead seems like the play. Gets a zombie, and you're absolutely right. Here's the Guildgate for a second zombie. Yep. Right, and the worry there is that he wanted to make sure he had all 5 colors for next turn.
Right, and this just locks that decision up.
2 zombies. Rossum hoping to have a runaway Game 3 to send their team to the finals.
Yeah, and the scary thing about Golos in particular is that it also gives you something to do with your mana.
Pause here. It looks like Edgar might be... He's thinking about an Assassin's Trophy with that first Field of the Dead trigger on. Yeah, it's going to be a trophy on Field of the Dead. And Judge made a ruling, looks like that they'd passed that, so there was the second zombie. I guess on Edgar's side, he doesn't want to Assassin's Trophy until he knows the mana situation. Once he saw the Boros Guildgate, he says, okay, you have all 5.
Exactly.
And Krasis for 2 from Edgar, and that you can see it on his face. He's disgusted in it, too.
That's a sign of weakness here. He's likely missing his next land drop and wants to just make sure he can do something next turn to try and stay in this game.
And now he's just hoping that this Golos activation misses. 7 mana from Rossum. Taps it. Top 3 cards, can cast them all. And
Okay.
it is a miss. Okay, 3 lands. Rossum gets to play. Yeah, doesn't get to do much here.
Right, it has a Field of the Dead, which is a bit of a win, but Edgar's got to be happy about the fact that it's only a Field of the Dead.
Right, yeah, only Field Dead. And now the Golos looks like it's gone. Yeah. We do have a Realm Cloaked Giant, so a big win there for Edgar. He keeps his tournament alive.
Okay, and this is what getting back into this game looks like. He cleared the battlefield. He's got some breathing room. He now has a chance to develop a little bit.
All right, well, once upon a time from Rossum. Hey, there is a Golos in the top 5. He doesn't even have to ask his teammates about that one. It's going to be Golos again. 5 mana sets up with, again for next turn, and it's going to find another Field of the Dead. 2 more zombies into play for Rossum. Fabled Passage, 2 zombies.
That represents 4 total zombies, 2 of them with flash.
Right. Even if Edgar has another removal spell for the Golos, even for the zombies, say it's the other Realm Cloaked Giant, there's still some risk here.
Right, the door is really starting to close on Edgar here. Needs to have another sweeper to deal with this battlefield and Golos.
Well,
dealing with only the zombies is not good enough anymore.
Yeah, he still only has 5 lands. He has not cast a ramp spell this game.
I see a white card in his hand, but I think it's a Kenrith and not a Realm Cloak Giant.
From Edgar, Growth Spiral. Field of the Dead. Land makes a does not make a zombie. It's 2 islands, but he will get 2 zombies here with Circuitous Route. But now Edgar's tapped out. He's behind on zombies. There is a Golos on the battlefield. He needs to survive the turn, but at this point, he's just watching Rossum's plays and hoping he'll survive.
Right, he only has 1 card in hand after this as well.
It's going to be a pass. On end step, Rossum can crack that Fabled Passage, and he will. Six zombies from Rossum. This is 15 power. He knows he is close here. Can he find a way to make it lethal this turn?
Just looking for something like maybe a Kenrith here would likely just slam the door shut.
It looks like he has Kenrith in hand. And so they're counting out. So this is in play. It is 15 power. Kenrith would make it 20 power.
All right.
But 4 toughness of block, so he needs to find 2 more. How about 2 1/1 counters?
Kenrith can attack as well.
Yeah, though that we're counting it. Shows the Kenrith, and Edgar knows it is lethal. So John Rossum does pick up the win. They eventually